Okay, yeah, so I'm going to talk about Parsl sustainability. Sorry, everybody gets to see me? Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, and so I'll just kind of briefly say, as Kyle said before, we've been I think we've been very happy and reasonably successful with the original award that we had, which is really ending this year. It was a 5-year award. Parsl, as you know, is open source. We've had a funded development team that's been roughly 2 to 4 people or FTEs kind of varying per year. We released version 1 in 2020. We're now at version 1.2. Our number of downloads per year has been going up fairly dramatically, which is nice. Our number of contributors has been going up pretty rapidly, which is also nice. And it's worth mentioning that the focus since version 1 has really been a lot of maintenance rather than adding new features. And so we have also the fact that Parsl is used by lots of people. Sorry, I'll just say the slides, there's a DOI at the bottom, and so these slides are public, and so there's some stuff I'm not going to talk about, like actually this slide. Because I don't think we need to talk about Parsl users here, since everybody already is a Parsl user. But I will say that there's kind of different kinds of Parsl users and stakeholders. There's direct users who are just using Parsl to do some kind of science. There's platform developers like Ben, who we just had. There are CI providers, folks that are providing Parsl on their systems in some way. We have linked contributors like the work queue folks, and then we have funders. And so, from the point of view of kind of us as running Parsl in some ways, we've been thinking, like, how do we do the best job that we can of satisfying all these different groups and providing something that is useful to all of them. The other fact that came into the work for the current proposal, the next award, is that we don't really feel like Parsl is sustainable as it is today. As the usage grows, the work of the core team grows as well, but the funding doesn't necessarily grow. And Parsl is supported by this weird kind of combination of sources. I mean, probably like a lot of other projects. So we had the original award. We have external funding from projects and collaborators that depend on Parsl. We have volunteer or in-kind efforts from groups that are developing tools that use Parsl, as well as from companies that are using Parsl in their services. And these provided or volunteered resources are really useful for adding features to Parsl. And they can support a limited number of use cases, but they're not really coordinated, and they potentially can lead to problems in overall support because they add to the support burden of the overall core team in the end. So this funded Parsl team now is responsible for managing the community, reviewing code contributions, fixing bugs, supporting users, developing new features, releasing new versions, among other things. And it's a fair amount of work. So what we went for and have been successful in is getting a new NSF award that's aimed specifically at Parsl sustainability. And our goal is that the funding from various sources will at least match the cost of performing all the project activities into the future. We've looked at different ways to sustain the project previously, from open source to working with commercial entities, and we decided that there wasn't a single answer. None of these things was going to be the answer. And just making code available on a GitHub repo doesn't actually support the core activities. Making our code commercial would limit access and reduce science impact. So what we're trying to do is to have this multifaceted community-centric approach to understand and then reduce the cost of core activities and to identify resources that can support those activities into the future. This is probably a chart that I could talk about for the remainder of my time, but basically it's worth saying that, let's see, does this work? Yes, okay. That originally when we were working on Parsl, we were really doing lots of development, and that's where most of our resources were going, and as well as user support that ramped up over time. And we also have been doing maintenance, which we've kind of been ramping up a little bit more slowly. We have R&D efforts, which we would like to continue and to be able to support new activities within Parsl. And then we have a number of users that's also been going up over time. And so where we want to go is from this area where we are now, where development is really the main thing, to an area where user support becomes the main thing, and maintenance also is a large thing. And maybe development actually is not the thing that we're really paying for going forward. We want to try to leverage other sources of development activity. And ideally, we get into some sustainable future where we can, again, kind of balance the resources coming in and the work that we want to do by both increasing resources as well as lowering work. So at a high level, we want to follow the model that's been done by some projects like AstroPi and YT, for example. We want to work on community, governance, funding streams, innovation, training, and outreaching and engagement. And we want to work with other related communities like the software sustainability community and the workflows community. And then finally, we really want to also capture and document and share what we learned during this 2 years of this project so that it hopefully will help other projects that are in a similar situation. The other thing that we want to do is to reduce technical debt. So that's what we need to do to actually make the maintenance easier over time. And I'm not going to talk about that at all. I'm going to focus on the first parts of these things, and other people will talk about some of the other initial activities in the more technical side. So one thing is that we have this idea that we have engagement points where people come into the project, and they have these different mechanisms on the bottom that we use to move people from one step to the next step. And on the top are the different steps where somebody moves from discovery of the project up to participation and up to leadership, hopefully. At least some people do. That's what we would like to have happen. We also to do this, we're going to be using all contributors to try to recognize everybody that's made code contributions as well as non-code contributions, which we haven't done a great job of up to this point. And we'll be continuing an inclusive authorship policy for people that have made contributions in any way. In terms of governance, we're going to be applying to become a NumFocus project, and you may be familiar with NumFocus from some of the other projects. We want to do this to be able to handle future finances in a institution neutral manner. So money doesn't come to Chicago or Illinois, it goes to NumFocus, and then it goes out to people who are doing the work, who may be at a variety of places, whoever is best qualified to do the work, not whoever happens to be here at Illinois. We're going to create a project governance charter that's similar to that of AstroPi. And so if you haven't seen the AstroPi charter, I think it's a great set of roles and a great way of doing things. We will, in addition, have people that'll be champions from different disciplines. And so we may be contacting some of you about trying to see if you would be willing to take a role in this governance to represent Parsl to a community. We also will have, so I don't want to go into all of this in detail, but basically the idea is that we'll start with some voting members. Over time, we'll try to increase voting members as we increase membership overall in a formal community. And then the last thing I'll just say is that Eric Toller, who's part of the AstroPi governance working group, has agreed to work with us and to help us understand what AstroPi has learned along the way. Okay, we're thinking of different kinds of funding, and we want to try to formalize some of these models and to be able to generalize them in some ways. So in-kind contributions, collaborative partnerships, financial support. All three of these, we want to be able to say, this is a way that we do this, and this is a way we record it, and this is a way that we make it work most effectively based on the experiences we've had so far. We also then, as I said before, are going to try to use NumFocus as a way of doing some of the financial parts of this. So we're planning to establish a Parsl job and task board where we can have work that comes in where we know we want to fund that work, and then people can apply to actually do that work, and then we'll pay the people to do that work. Again, as opposed to saying that everything has to happen in-house. And Parallel Works has agreed to pilot this mechanism with us, so we're looking forward to that. In terms of evolution and innovation, we have the fact that Parsl has to kind of keep innovating to some extent in terms of workloads and cyber infrastructure, kind of adapting to new access, looking at performance, looking at novel hardware. But on the other hand, this active R&D is not what we want to do in sustainability. So we feel like we are not going to be funded under these awards to do R&D. We want to see the R&D happen from other people that feel like they can do something useful with Parsl to have some interesting investigation. And then we want to take what gets learned in there that maybe they publish and bring it into Parsl and do it in a way that has maybe a plug-in model where there's maintenance that's clear, maybe a maturity model, maybe a handoff model. We need to work exactly on the details of this, but we want to have the idea that people can do research outside and have a way of bringing that into Parsl and having it become part of the Parsl project, but it doesn't necessarily be something, it's not necessarily something that the core team does directly. We are going to be doing some training work. We're going to be trying to follow the carpentries model and have a train the trainers activity. Again, thinking of champions in different disciplines, maybe champions at different HPC facilities that can be involved in this. We have a material science tutorial that was developed and given last year at supercomputing. We want to have some other domain-specific tutorials in biology and geoscience coming up. We're going to move our biweekly or fortnightly office hours to weekly. We're going to continue to work on Slack, and we'll again try to work more with computing centers than we have, although we've actually been doing a reasonable job of this now, I think, at least in the US. We have this meeting in terms of outreach and engagement, the development meeting. Again, we're going to try to make as much development as possible open. And so rather than having people in a closed room make decisions, we want to make this open and have whoever wants to come get involved, and whoever makes contributions and gets involved then kind of gets promoted into voting and governance over time as well. We will be redoing the website. We're continuing to write blogs or to at least publish blogs. We did a great job of this in 2019 of getting blog posts from a bunch of people that came to Parsl Fest. We did a lousy job after that. And so we'd like to go back to doing a good job. So if you've given a talk, we would love for you to write up maybe, I don't know, 3 paragraphs about your talk that we will publish as a blog post either on Parsl or FunkX or both, depending on which area you're focusing on. We also want to propose Parsl and Parsl usage for prominent awards. So for R&D 100, HPC Wire, things like that. So if you think that there's something really kind of exciting that you've heard about here or that you hear about somewhere else, please let us know and we'll try to help promote that. And, because it'll benefit both the work as well as us. So it's kind of a nice win-win. And we'll try to amplify things that are going on. So if you're doing work using Parsl and you tell us about it, we will try to amplify the message of your work and of Parsl, or FunkX, but Parsl in this case. The last couple of pieces here is I'm pretty heavily involved in the software sustainability community overall. We have a project called URSI, a US Software Sustainability Institute that we just got 3 grants from the Sloan Foundation to start up and 1 NSF award. And so that will be moving forward, and we'd like to continue taking lessons from here, moving them there, take lessons from there, move them here, et cetera. There are other programs like the CZI EOSS program, the Better Scientific Software program, where again, we want to communicate and make sure that we're learning and using lessons. And then the workflows community Kyle has talked about. And so there's the workflows community initiative, which I misspelled, sorry. As well as ExoWorks, which I maybe also have misspelled and put in a hyphen. But in any case, we want to continue to work with these communities as well. And then finally, one of the other pieces we'll do is to, again, as I said, I think before, try to track what we're doing and document it and then share it with other people so they can learn from it. And one of the interesting challenges here that we were just talking about this morning is that we actually want to measure the effort and funding that we work on the project over the next 2 years and document that and say, how much are we putting into development? How much are we putting into training, et cetera? We don't really have any good idea how to do this other than like trying to record time weekly for every developer and every pull request person, which sounds horrible. So if you have any good ideas about how to take a distributed project with volunteers and track the time of both the funded people and the volunteers, we would love to hear about that because that's really what we want to do. Yeah, so I think that's all that I was going to say. Okay. Hey, 1 minute fast. Impressive. Okay, questions?
I'd like to ask a question. Yeah. So you said something like sustainability and R&D are sort of antithetical to each other. You know, I guess I mean, it's such a broad topic, but in general, I mean, if you look at sort of Globus or Linux, 2 very different things. But in both cases, someone built a neat prototype, and then at last, I mean, the amount of money required to keep Globus going and meet everyone's needs, and Linux, of course, is far, far bigger. And I think that's in my respect, that's a fundamentally wrong statement. And if you know, as people use the software for more things, there'll be more and more needs. And you can say, well, that's someone else has to do that, and therefore we're going to call it R&D. And it's not the same as what you have D and R&D.
Yeah.
I wonder if you're going to try and plan for real sustainability, you may actually need resources, total resources may increase over time rather than go down.
Yeah, so that I think that kind of on one hand, I would say I agree with you, and that certainly is possible. That's what we'll learn. It's an NSF project. It is a research project, so we may be wrong. We'll see. On the other hand, though, I would also point to your flag and say this is Globus Labs. This isn't Globus. So somehow Globus has made this distinction between these two different pieces. So maybe it makes sense for us to make this distinction as well.
I mean, I think if I remember back to that picture, I think part of that picture was about what this NSF funding was going to pay for. And it was a key point that the NSF funding is not going to pay for our R&D.
Yes.
Because we have a bunch of R&D projects that are funded through NSF R&D solicitations.
Yes.
And so we wanted to provide a vehicle because, I mean, Parsl dies if it's not innovative. Parsl dies if it's not keeping up with new use cases and hardware, etc. So we need to provide pathways to get the R&D into Parsl in a way that it's usable. One of the problems we have is that we have a lot of people, and I'm probably the biggest candidate or culprit for this, doing sort of R&D things, half-assing it to get a paper, putting it in the Parsl code base. Ben Clifford is probably smiling over a beer out there in the sky somewhere. But, and that ultimately just builds up a bunch of maintenance work for the core Parsl team to support stuff that was really not.
Hard. I mean, but you know, NSF has this very does your sustainability. It's magically happening. So, but we know that's not the case. So,
yeah, it's interesting. And I think one of the good things with our sort of this project is we're exploring one way of sustainability. FunkX is almost exploring the other direction, more of a Globus-like model for how we can actually support development.
Very good. I mean, it's very interesting talking.
It's definitely a fun area to think about.
We'll see what happens.